All right. Let me actually shoot a message in the WhatsApp group quickly. All right. I've sent. Hey, Chirag, what's up? We've got 4 people in here, so whoever is not Chirag, you should actually say hello and be nice. Hey, Isha, what's up? So we're just going to wait for a few minutes. We're going to wait for, I would say, 5 to 7 minutes for people to show up. And then we can start talking about insurance and all of those nice things. Hey, Janvi. Hey, Madhura. Hey, Radhika. What's up? How's everyone doing? Hey, Ayush. What's up? How's the weather in India? I mean, obviously, India is that's a generalization, but how is it right now? I'm guessing the rains have started, right? Also, while you guys respond to that, let me quickly get my laptop charger because I don't want to kill the stream. All right, we are plugged in. So, hey Vinod, what's up, man? Janvi says rainy, and Parag says quite humid. Yeah, I thought so. You know, at least for me, I don't know if this is true for other people, but when I came to the US, I found it to be quite dry, and so I kind of actually missed that weather. So I would take it. So actually, my advice to you then is enjoy while it lasts. Oh fuck! Thanks, Parag. That's I don't know that is that public. I don't know that video was public. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. I should probably make that video private. But 10 by 10 stalking skills. Good job. All right. No comment. Again, we're just going to wait for 2 more minutes. Everyone who's here and is not interested in the chit chat and is here for the actual content, I don't blame you. But we'll just wait for a couple more minutes so that whoever is actually planning on showing up does show up and doesn't actually miss out on any content. Just to give you guys a little bit of a preview into what we're going to cover today, I'm going to start off by just quickly covering the basics of insurance, the 4 or 5 sort of core ideas and core terms, which are coinsurance, copays, deductibles, and exclusions. If you fully understand what those 4 things mean, you can then start to really objectively evaluate any insurance. Then I'm going to quickly talk about how people tend to think, and by people I mean incoming international students tend to think about insurance, and what specifically is wrong with that kind of thinking. And then we're going to kind of move towards the way we think about insurance and the way we hope you can actually start thinking about insurance. And I know this is not the sexiest of topics, so to speak, but you are moving to an entirely new country, and I think having the willingness to learn about these things is going to serve you well in the sense that, you know, this is going to be probably one of the least complex things that you actually understand as you transition to the US, and, you know, hopefully become successful. So yeah, so we're going to cover that, and after each segment, so to speak, I'll pause for questions. Once we're done with these things, that'll probably be about 15 or so minutes, or 20 minutes maybe, because sometimes I just don't know how long I'm talking for. So you guys feel free to tell me to shut up or ask questions in the middle, and I'll answer them. Anyway, so once that segment is done, then we'll break and sort of just take questions, and then whatever plans people want comments on, comparisons on, so on and so forth, we can dive into that. So that is a high-level overview of how today's session is going to be structured. here is, I'm going to drop a couple of plans brochures in the chat. So actually, why don't I hold off? Oh, actually, maybe I should just drop it right now. This is the immune plan, which is our best plan. It's pre-approved by Drexel. It'll work. It'll be approved for the waiver. If you're suspicious of it, if you're skeptical that, hey, is my waiver going to be approved? That's good. You should be skeptical. You shouldn't take me for my word. And so that's why the process we are going to follow, and we follow. And I'm confident that we are the only company in this entire industry that does this. That you pay a certain amount of registration fee, which is going to be like $25. And once you're done paying that, we actually create your insurance ID and all of that stuff, and we file the waiver application for you. And then when that application is approved, only then you pay the full amount. And if it's not approved, then we return the money to you, the $25, and that's about it. So it's gonna be if you're skeptical, this is probably the safest way to actually buy outside insurance. Not to say again that sort of we haven't done our homework. We've sold insurance to hundreds of students. I think over 102. I think around 102 universities accept our insurance is pre-approved at 102 universities. I believe at certain universities like Penn and all the UC schools like UCLA and UCST, you actually get to skip the waiver process if you're going with our insurance. So point being, it's well researched. It's unlike a bunch of other vendors, or you've got Indian insurance plans and so on and so forth. It's not junk. And yeah, in fact, the plan that I just linked to is the plan that I'm on. So we literally are putting our money where our mouth is. So that's one plan that we're going to be discussing in more detail today. Parag asks, also the $25 will be deducted from the insurance premium. Yes. So the $25 is not some kind of extra fee, by the way. It's just going to be deducted from the premium itself. So it literally is the safest and the best deal you could get, because you're just paying a very small fraction of your premium, and that's actually allowing you to get the waiver approved. We also do all of that legwork in terms of the paperwork and the process required. So we file the waiver for you, and then once it's approved, you don't have anything to worry about, and that's when you actually pay. Okay. Let me drop the other plan that is eligible for Drexel. So this is a United Health plan that we have. It's called Elite. And this is another plan called United Health Plus. These three plans are pre-approved and verified. They will be accepted by your university. Drexel has a set of requirements, and these plans meet all of those requirements. However, that doesn't mean that all of these plans are identical. And so that's something we're going to talk about today. We're going to compare these plans, and we're going to compare any other plan that you have in mind. And that will be it. Okay, so I think that's enough talk for now. Let's dive into things. Before I start, I just want to ask people if there's anything they want to ask before I actually dive into stuff, because I'm going to be talking for about 5 minutes about the basic terms and concepts like co-insurance, deductible, so on and so forth. So any sort of housekeeping questions, like just anything that you have to ask, any comment, anything right now, now's a good time to type it out. I'll wait for 30-ish seconds. And if you're ready to go, then just, I don't know, say I'm like ready to go, or like ready, or use some kind of indicative emoji. So 30 seconds, I'll wait. Starts now. Also, please guys, don't be dead. Like, wake the F up. Chirag asks, the brochure is for the autoimmune plan, right? Yes, Chirag, but it's for the Aetna immune plan. Autoimmune is a class of diseases. Chirag asks, could you share the one for the diamond plan as well? Yes, I will talk about the diamond plan, Chirag. All right, Brashti says ready. Kiran says ready. Parag seems to be ready through an emoticon. Parth is in the house, the OG YouTube star. There are 15 people here, and there are only 3 people who actually said, like, everything is good to go. I'm ready. Radhika asks, can you tell something about the PSI plan? Yeah, Radhika, so that will cover towards the end of the session, where I'm going to contrast and evaluate the plans that I just linked and any PSI plan that you have in mind. So PSI, just like us, by the way, a caveat, is a broker. We are a broker and administrator, so we take student requests and sort of help insurance companies deal with student requests. So there is no such thing as a PSI plan. This is a conceptual error that a lot of people make, essentially. So it's just like it's endorsed as a PSI plan, but it's actually either United Health plan or an Aetna plan or whatever plan. So we actually have every plan that PSI has at a guaranteed cheaper price. So as an example, the PSI Gold plan, PSI charges $770 for it. If you buy it through us, it's $750, and it's the exact same plan. That's because PSI charges a markup that we don't charge. All right, okay. The crowd is alive. Mayuresh, thumbs up. Isha says ready. Rakshit says ready. Chirag is thumbs up. Akshat says ready. Janvi is ready. And Ayush is ready. All right. Cool. Okay, let's start. So let's start. So one of the first things is, I'm sure you guys have already, if you've seen an insurance package or a PDF or a brochure, excuse me, I'm sure you've already come across the term deductible. I'm sure you've already come across the term copay, and I'm sure you've already come across the term coinsurance. These 3 terms or concepts are really one of the fundamental ways in which you can both define and evaluate an insurance. So let's talk about each of them, and then we can kind of maybe go through some examples, and you can tell me if you're not following any part of it. So let's talk about a deductible first. A deductible is the amount of money that you pay from your own pocket before the insurance plans become active. Whatever insurance plan you're on, once you've paid the amount of deductible from your own pocket for a medical expense, then the insurance plan becomes entirely active. So think of it sort of as an activation fee. So as an example, if the deductible for a plan is $100, right? So the first $100 of your medical expenses for that entire year, like the whatever period for which you have the insurance, will have to come out of your own pocket. Once that threshold is crossed, the insurance plan becomes active. And so that's that term, that number, that is what is known as a deductible. So in some ways, what you're really paying is not the premium. So say if you have an insurance, like say, let's talk about the Gold plan, the PSI Gold, or actually what we should be calling it is the Gold plan, right? So you're not actually paying $770 for it. You're paying $770 plus $100, right? Because the insurance just isn't going to be active for the first $100 of your expense. So that's one important thing to remember. And again, these are all things that you should start taking into account as you evaluate what plan you're going for, because you shouldn't really be judging plans based on the premium you're paying, and especially certainly not optimizing for cheap premiums, because the premium is not actually what you'd be paying in reality. What you'd be paying would be the premium plus whatever you spend in the entire year, right? So the expected cost is what you want to calculate, and that is the actual evaluation of a plan. In fact, the way US citizens buy plans, they buy plans in sort of government portals and websites known as state insurance marketplaces, and their plans are actually ranked and sorted based on not the premium cost, but the expected cost. So we're going to dive into this concept a little bit more as you sort of start to digest each term and concept. But remember this concept that the way you guys are currently comparing plans, especially the price, is actually flawed because it only tells half the picture. So deductible is the amount of money that comes out of your own pocket before the plan becomes active at all. All right. Now, one nuance about deductibles is that deductibles are of 2 types. There is something called an annual deductible, and there is something called a per illness or per occurrence deductible. Now, what is the difference? There's actually a gigantic difference in terms of the actual definition, and there's an even more gigantic difference in terms of how it'll affect how much money you spend. So an annual deductible is the better option of the 2 kinds of deductibles. An annual deductible simply means that in the entire plan year or in the entire duration that you've bought the insurance for, The deductible is applicable only once. So the first $100, assuming say the deductible is $100, the first $100 that you pay in the entire year will come out of your own pocket, and then the insurance becomes active. So it's like it's an annual activation fee as opposed to a per illness or per occurrence activation fee. So now if you're following, you might understand already what a per occurrence or per illness deductible is. That is basically every time you use a healthcare provider, you go to your student health center, you go to your you go to any other doctor outside of the student health center. Every time the first $100, if it's a per illness deductible, the first, and the number is $100, the first $100 every time will come out of your own pocket. So now, hopefully, you're starting to see a little bit that what's written on paper is wildly different from what actually happens in practice, right? And this is something that ISO is actually particularly notorious about, or there are certain brokers who, what they do is they tend to reduce the complexity and nuance to simplify the sales pitch. And that tends to, that actually tends to end up harming the student. But by the time you're actually using the plan, excuse me, brokers tend to be out of the equation, right? They get their bonus after the sale's made, and that's the end of the story. So this is a key and very important metric to understand, because if you have a per occurrence deductible, that means your costs are going to be ballooning like anything, right? Because say if you go to the doctor 3 times in the entire year, or use any kind of healthcare service, whether it is like you just got a cold or whatever, if your annual deductible is $100, then you just spend $100 there, and that's it. And then whatever expenses are to be calculated will be calculated. But if we assume that that's constant, and between an annual deductible where you pay $100, and if you have a plan where it's in per occurrence deductible, you have to pay $100 first every time you go. So those 3 times you went, you'll have to pay $100 first out of your own pocket. So already you're starting to see, for a very small number of visits, right? Like, I don't think it's crazy to assume that someone will actually go to the health services. It could be for something as simple as like getting a cold medication, right? I don't think it's crazy to assume that you'll be using that service for 3 times a year. And so for just that small amount of usage, you already have a $200 difference. And so all Indian plans, and the vast majority, if not all ISO plans, have a per occurrence deductible. So what that means is you might be thinking, wait, this ISO plan is priced at $700. This other plan is priced at $1,000. I'm getting $300 worth of savings on the premium. Why don't I just go for this? But what's actually happening is that you're not saving that money. You go to the doctor 3 times, that difference is even. And guess what? It doesn't stop there, right? Like, you go to the 4th time, it's now you're at -100 now. Like, the difference between those plans, which the money that you thought you were saving is not 0. It's actually costing you more. So that's a very crucial thing to understand. 2 types of deductibles, annual and per occurrence. Anyway, that already was like 10 minutes. So yeah, I'm not gonna pause right now. I'm gonna do co-insurance and copay, and then we'll and exclusions, and then we'll sort of break for questions. Is everyone following so far? Any questions? Is the sound good? Is everything a-okay? Again, don't be dead fish. Tell me what your thoughts are, and tell me that everything's cool. Everyone's following? Okay. Kiran gives me a thumbs up. Awesome. Okay, I will take. Great. Alrighty. Wow, everyone just woke the fuck up. All right. Okay, cool. So let's move on. So we have, we talked about deductible, right? That's kind of the first line item you see when you read a brochure. Let's talk about the other 2 important components of an insurance, and the other 2 sort of culprits of any insurance, because again, these are the terms under which brokers or shady insurance companies really burr you, right? Like they will have fine print that doesn't actually tell you the whole truth, and you buy plans under the assumption or under the guile of the fact that, hey, I'm getting a pretty good deal and I'm saving money, but it turns out you're neither getting quality nor are you getting savings. So that like what's the phrase? The acha hai but sasta hai. The issue with these plans is they're neither acha nor sasta, and it's just that you think they're sasta, right? But later on you realize that that's not the case. Anyway, and actually one small point that I'll make here is that I don't know if you guys have encountered this. If you haven't, then that's actually a good thing. There are certain universities, there are certain seniors, quote unquote, like people who've actually been here for a year, which, by the way, note that that's not a very long time to fully understand how these things work. They recommend some shitty plans because I think most often if someone recommends a plan to you, ask them how many times have you used that plan, what actually happened to you, like ask them what's actually happened in the past year. Because if they actually haven't used the plan and if they're recommending it, what they're saying, hey, I didn't actually need to use the plan, and so that $200 $300 saving that I had was actually intact, and that's what I'm recommending to you, right? But you cannot come to the US and assume that you're not going to need to use healthcare services for a couple of times at the very least, right? That's just an unrealistic expectation, and that's going to be foiled when you get here, right? So when someone recommends a plan to you, you should ask them and probe them about their experiences, right? Because recommending a plan that someone's actually not properly used is like recommending a car or like a bike that you've never actually driven, right? So that's like saying, hey, yeah, go buy that car. Like that's a freaking great car. How do you know if you've not actually used it, right? So really important point to remember. And if you're someone who's a current student, stop fucking doing this. Like you know, if you're an Indian student and you've grown up sort of just having this concept of doctor appointment liya, you go there, you pay the expenses because it's not really that expensive. Then insurance to you is an expense. It's a luxury, right? Like conceptually, no matter how much I will, you know, try to extol the virtues of insurance and tell you that it's important, tell you that it saves your ass, right? That conceptual shift is going to take a while. If it ever happens, it's going to take a while to have that conceptual shift to sort of regard insurance as essential. But that's the thing you have to understand. Insurance is not a luxury. Insurance is it's a necessity in the US. You'd be surprised. Health insurance debt is the biggest cause of debt in the US. Think about that. It's not mortgage payments. It's not like home loans, right? Typically, that's what you'd expect. But health insurance debt in the US is the biggest, highest cause of debt and bankruptcy in the country. So that should tell you that you are walking into an ecosystem where this is a necessity, not a luxury. And so why I say that is because this is an important decision. And if you're not fully equipped about the facts and all of the contingencies and all of the situations that might arise, don't color someone's opinion based on your own personal experience, because you're just one data point, right? And so especially in this case where you have seniors and peers that you're looking up to because they're sort of like the lighthouse for you, just be aware of the power that your words carry, and be aware that you cannot predict what's going to happen with everyone. And I'm not saying again that like everyone should go buy a $4,000 plan, but what I'm saying is that there should be a shift in the mindset, and there should be like, this shouldn't just be a line item you want to check off before you get on a plane. This is an important decision, and so treat it as such, both if you're advising someone and if you're buying it. If you're telling someone your experience, be sure and be respectful and be smart enough to contextualize it properly and say, hey, yeah, I didn't really have to use my plan, but this is the plan I was at. So I can't actually vouch for what happens if you actually need to use the plan, right? Anyway, I don't want to lecture people too much, but it's something to remember and keep in mind and bear in mind for all of you who are buying these plans this year. You will be those people next year, right? You will be influencing people's opinions next year. So at least you guys should remember that, hey, I want to foster a sort of a more intelligent and more self-aware way to purchase and make these decisions. Anyway, alrighty. So we talked about the deductible. Everyone understands it. Everyone understands what it means. Everyone understands how you have to look at the fine print. So anytime you buy a plan, you should obligatorily ask the broker or whatever the person is my plan deductible annual or is it per occurrence? Because a lot of times what they do is they'll have an asterisk, right? That asterisk buried somewhere else, and it says per illness, per occurrence, per injury, right? And you do not want to buy a plan like that, because every time like that kind of insurance might as well not exist. So that's a very important point. Now we move on to something called copay. I'll talk about copay because copay and deductible are two things that people often get confused with. But actually, Before I talk about copay, let me talk about co-insurance. Co-insurance is actually relatively simple to understand. Co-insurance is the percentage of your medical expenses that the health insurance company or provider will cover. So say if the co-insurance percentage in the brochure is written as 80%. So for example, the Aetna Immune has 80% co-insurance. Then what that means is for most expenses, unless otherwise noted, key phrase with things like insurance, unless otherwise noted, your expenses are covered at 80%. So you pay 20% of the bill. And so we're going to dive into what falls into these unless otherwise noted things. And copay tends to be actually one of those things that applies in that unless otherwise noted category. So co-insurance is a simple enough concept to understand. Co-insurance, it's what the insurance company pays or shares, the percentage of the bill that the insurance company shares with you. Simple concept. So let's talk about copay, right? Very similar to, so if you look at the etymology of the word, some of you might be remembering your GRE prep test books, but if you look at the etymology of the word, it's copay, right? So copay is essentially, it's somewhat similar to the deductible and somewhat similar to co-insurance, but it's kind of its own thing. So try to wrap your head around this, and then I'm going to pause for questions and make sure that people understand it. So copay is essentially the amount of money that you pay for a specific service before your insurance covers 100% of the expense. So, so the key thing to understand here is it's kind of like deductible in the sense that it's an activation fee-like concept, but it applies to specific services only. So it's like a separate add-on from the deductible. The deductible is kind of like generally the activation fee for the plan to become active, right? For the insurance to become active at all, right? So it's like deductible, once the deductible is paid, then the co-insurance percentage becomes a relevant variable. Because what that means is once you've paid your $100, then 80% of all of your medical bills are covered by the insurance. Now, copay behaves as such. So I'll give you an example of something that tends to have copay and is going to be very central to you guys, and it's probably going to be your most frequent expense in the US. That is prescription medication or just medicines, right? Prescription medication typically has a copay, and it tends to, what a copay in the case of prescription medication means, so this is sort of an extra layer of complexity. Medication is divided in the US into different tiers: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. There's also tier 4 and tier 5, but it's mostly tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And as you go like down the tiers, so tier 1 is like generic unbranded medication, which is probably not as sort of specialized and potent or powerful. Tier 2 is sort of like more common, like if you actually probably have a medical incident that you need to see a doctor for, like you sprain your leg or whatever, you fall in the snow, which has happened to me multiple times. And you probably, tier 2 is sort of your average case, what you'd be assuming, I would assume you'd be using if you actually have a medical incident. And tier 3 is sort of a more specialized case of drugs, and hopefully you don't have to use those drugs. But that's for like proper diagnosed conditions. So copays apply to prescription drugs, and there's a copay for every tier of medication. So as an example, the Aetna Immune Plan has a copay of $10 for tier 1 drugs, $20 for tier 2 drugs, and $40 for tier 3 drugs. What that means is that if you're purchasing a tier 1 drug, then you pay $10 at first. That comes out of your own pocket, and then the rest of the rest of the expenses covered by the insurance company, right? So do you see how this is kind of like a domain-specific, narrower version of deductible? It's like what you pay before the insurance company shares the bill or covers the rest of it in this case, right? So for tier 1 medication, the copay is $10. For tier 2 medication, in the case of Aetna Immune, it's $20. And for tier 3, one second. So Chirag actually has a question. Could you please explain these with an example? Let's say the case of a common disease like the flu and one case in the ER, let's say a fracture. I meant copay and co-insurance. Yes, Chirag, that's a very good point. I will do that right after this. So prescription medication is one of those things where copay applies. And so you've got $20 for tier 2 medication. So anytime you buy a tier 2 medication, You pay $20, the first $20 for a 31-day supply, and then the rest of it is covered by insurance. And tier 3 is that same number is $40. So it kind of keeps increasing. Now, copay can be applied. So copay is applied to various services. And again, if you actually read the plan brochure, you'll be able to see this. So for example, there is something called the office visit copay. What that means is that there is a certain amount of money that you pay initially for any office visit. Now, if you guys have, and I recommend you to actually open the Aetna Immune brochure, because that's actually more readable than the United Health, what do you call it? The United Health brochure. And follow along. I think it'll make a bit more sense to you. So there's something called the office visit copay, which is copay that applies to an office visit. Now, what is an office visit? Very simple. It's when you actually make an appointment and see a doctor. So it's like visiting the office of a doctor. Very simple, right? So it's like the appointment fees for any doctor is capped at $25 for you if the office visit copay is $25. Similarly, there's a copay for, which is relevant to what Chirag is saying. And again, I'll do a more specific example. There's a copay for going to the emergency room. Now, you guys might ask, what is the emergency room? Sounds kind of dangerous. What is it? So essentially, the emergency room is kind of self-evidently somewhere you go when you kind of have a bit of a medical emergency. Now here, I think because we've grown up in India, or most of us certainly here, our definition of an emergency and the definition of a medical emergency in the US really varies. So say if you have food poisoning or you have really serious stomachache, you probably are going to go to the emergency room, especially if your student health center is closed. Because your first point of medical contact is always going to be a student health center, right? So, but that's going to be open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you had some kind of like funny dinner, if you drank a lot, or, I mean, in which case you probably have to call 911 or your friends take you. But it's like the place where you go to get immediate treatment. Now, the emergency room copay is, I think, for Aetna Immune, $150, which by the way, if that sounds a lot to you, that is one of the lowest copays probably you'll find in the best plans in the US as well. Like plans worth $4K, $5,000, something like that. So $125 copay, $150 copay for emergency room. That simply means that the first $150 worth of expenses will come out of your own pocket, and the rest of it is covered by the insurance. Okay. So again, copay, there are various copays that the insurance companies insert into the plans because they kind of calculate what's going to be the average usage of these plans, and that's how they make a profit. Like they predict that, okay, this population of people is going to be using this insurance plan this much, and so what they try to do is they try to predict that on average, how much do I price this insurance? That on average, on the entire body of people, say 100, 500,000, whatever the body of people that a particular insurance is applied to, on average, they want to make a profit, and across the entire population. Anyway, those are the definitions of deductibles, copays, and coinsurance. Now, let me grab water. 1, 2. Why don't you guys put your questions in the comments about copays, deductibles, coinsurance, and I'll take those questions, and then I'm going to do an example, as Chirag very wisely suggested, so that we can tie all of this up with a nice finish. All right, cool. I'll be right back. Please type your questions in. I'm just going to get some water. All right, I am back. Let us look at questions, and let me actually change the track. I don't know if people can actually even hear the music. So, all right, cool. Let's take questions. Bharat asks, how much do we have to pay if we go to the health center? So yeah, this is an important statistic for the really good plans. This statistic is called the student health center copay, right? So for the really good plans, the student health center copay is zero because it really shouldn't cost you that much money or any money at all, especially as an international student, to go to your student health center, because that's going to be, as I said, your first touch point of healthcare in the US. In my 4 years at Brown, I probably only had to go to not the health center maybe three times in 4 years for myself. Or yeah, and there are a couple. I have a visual condition, so I actually had to see a doctor, like specialist, for that. But generally speaking, the health centers at a university are pretty well staffed, and so for any like initial sort of level of care, you're probably covered. So it's really important to have zero student health center copay, or ideally ideally zero is the number. So to answer Part's question, for Aetna Immune, the student health center copay is zero, which means that any treatment, you're not going to pay for anything at the student health center except for medication, and if you get any tests done, because that counts as separate. But it wouldn't cost you to actually just go and get a consultation, anything of that sort. So for Aetna Immune, it's zero. For the United plans, it's zero as well. And for all good plans, it would be zero. Again, here's another place where ISO and Indian plans really rip you off. All of them apply the deductible per occurrence to every time you even visit the student health center, right? So in the case of, Indian plans are just completely ripping you off because you have to pay $100 every time to just go and see your own university's doctor. In the case of a bunch of ISO plans, I know that ISO Secure, the general version, I'll have to look at the Drexel version, but again, I'm sure it's not zero for ISO. I believe that the number is $45. So every time you actually go to see your doctor at the student health center, you'll have to pay $45 out of your own pocket. Again, that $300 difference that you're actually buying those plans for starts to thin out and melt very quickly. So that's my answer to that question. Radhika asks, the insurance gets active when we pay the deductible. Is it the same for copay? No, Radhika. So deductible is like, the scope of the deductible is an annual thing, right? So it's like the activation fee for the entire plan, basically, right? So the way it's similar for the copay, it just means copay applies for a specific service. So copay just means some amount of money has to come out of your own pocket, or you copay the cost, and you just pay that first. And so once that limit is met, whatever the remaining expenses, for example, in the case of medication, and it varies, different insurance plans have different terms, but typically once the copay is satisfied, it's all covered by the insurance, certainly in the case of medication. So hopefully, is that clear, Radhika? Like the difference between deductible and copay? Like copay specifically applies to a particular incident or a particular service. It's independent of the deductible. The deductible basically just like is a activation fee. Once that's kind of crossed, that just means that, okay, your insurance is now active. And so within that active insurance, copay is a term. It's just what you pay, like as a narrow sort of applicable pre-fee for a service, right? So just what you pay from your own pocket. So hopefully that was clear. Let me know if it isn't. Madhura asks, how do we know if insurance is accepted across healthcare centers? Madhura, you can check this, but I can tell you that the insurance plans that we have, they're pretty much accepted by all student healthcare centers, virtually 99% of them, because they are United Healthcare or Aetna plans. Another concept that I haven't talked about, but we can probably cover in future sessions, is that of a network, essentially. And so each insurance company has its own provider network, which simply just means that if a doctor you're visiting or if your student health center is a part of that network, you get a bunch of benefits. You pay much less. You don't have to actually like get reimbursed or whatever. You just give your ID number, they put it in the software, and they'll tell you deduct whatever amount that the insurance company covers, and they'll just tell you what you have to pay. So student health centers are in network for at least certainly all of our plans, and I know that that's the I can specifically check for Drexel again, but again, 99% of the university's health centers, I believe Georgia Tech is the only one that I've come across that has some caveat where you actually have to pay first and then things are reimbursed later, as you would have with an out-of-network provider. Parika asks, does Aetna Immune cover any blood tests, and how much will it pay for monthly prescription medication? So Parika, yes, it does cover blood tests. Same 80% co-insurance applies, and there's no copay for blood tests. So that just means straight away that 80%, the insurance is going to be covering your blood test, which will be expensive. It's not like you have to pay some fixed expense and then the insurance becomes active for blood tests, right? So that's what copay is, again, reinforcing that concept. Now, how much will it pay for monthly prescription medication? Parika, as I said, it's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Aetna, I mean, this is one of the best features of that plan, is that tier 1 ka copay is $10. Tier 2 ka copay is $20. Tier 3 ka copay is $40. So what that means is for a 31-day prescription, for any of these tiers, you're never going to pay more than the copay, because uske baad, everything is covered by the insurance. So if you're taking a tier 3 medication, which, I don't know, treats some post radiation symptom of cancer even, though I'm sure that's more in tier 4, tier 5, that you're going to pay the same amount of money for that, $40, as you would pay for, I don't know, some other condition that's not as serious and in that tier. So it's like a ceiling. And that's the great thing about that plan, is that really the most frequent expense you'll have will be buying medication in the US. And so it's capped. Like, you're not going to be spending for a 30-day supply more than $40 for tier 3 medication, more than $20 for tier 2 medication, and more than $10 for tier 1 medication. Hopefully that's clear. Mayuresh asks, Radhika says, like you mentioned, copay is applicable to the prescription medicines or office visit. Which all places is it applicable? Radhika, so this is what you guys can see in the brochure. Off the top of my head, the common places where it's applicable is, because again, this varies by like insurance company, plan, right? Kind of going into what I wanted to talk about next, but I'll talk about it now itself because it's relevant, is that one of the issues that, or at least one of the things that people miss when they think about insurances is they ask these questions as a generality, right? So the truth is that, for example, Aetna as an insurance company has tens of thousands of insurance plans. United as an insurance company has tens of thousands of insurance plans, right? So the terms of those plans differ. All of these plans are different, right? So whether a particular plan charges a copay for medication, or it charges co-insurance, or it charges X for, going to the emergency room, or, makes you pay just to go to the student health center, like ISO, right? Like, try not to equate these things and tie them to company name, but always remember that it's the plan specifics. It's the specifics of the plan that you're on. That's what matters. So kind of to answer Radhika's question, you want to take a look at the brochure and analyze each of these things. And we'll talk towards the end. This is what I'm going to talk about. And this is what I hope you take away from this session, is how do you add all of these things up, right? How do you add deductible and premium? So how do you calculate the expected cost, right? We have been working on an actual tool that does this, which hopefully should be live by this weekend, where you don't have to do any of this math and work, but it's still really good for you to understand these things, because you can quickly estimate that if it's a $500 ISO plan, and you can take a look at the brochure, and if you understand how these things add up, you can quickly understand, okay, I'm being screwed over here, right? So this is fox, or whatever, the wolf in sheep's clothing, right? That's the phrase. So we'll keep kind of coming back to these basic concepts and how they're really applied, because this is kind of all it is, but the way they can be applied to across different plans are really different. So ultimately, you want to be analyzing a specific plan. Anyway, Let's go slightly quickly through the other stuff. Mayuresh asks, on an average, how much does a doctor's visit cost, emergency and otherwise? Mayuresh, again, like it's really hard to say what an average visit would cost because there are so many variables, right? It's what the doctor's going to charge you. It depends on what condition you're going for. It depends on, like, God forbid you have an accident, right? There, your bill's going to be in excess of 100K. Like, you can forget. And actually, ISO's plans do not have coverage for vehicle or motor accidents. So on the 1% off chance that you have a road accident, right? That's going to cost you 100 to 150K. And if you're going to the US and taking a loan for your degree, you can forget finishing that degree and you can start preparing to repay another loan that you'll have to take out. So, like, this is one of the most dangerous aspects of ISO's plan that really isn't discussed because that's crazy, right? Like, think about like not having coverage for something. And I understand that this is not a commonplace thing, but then again, like, this is such a huge risk that even a 1% chance of it, there's this concept in probability called the expected value. So the expected value, like, even if it's a 10% chance of incurring $150,000 worth of expense, that's 10% of 150K, $15,000 expected value, right? So that's really risky. Anyway, so kind of to answer your question, Mayuresh, again, I would love to give straightforward, simple answers to these questions, but my job is not to tell you what to think. My job is not to spoon feed you simplified, unnuanced answers. My job is to help you learn how to think about these things, right? So first of all, what you need to understand is none of these things have, like, there's no general number. What I can say, however, that's going to be helpful is that healthcare in the US is not cheap. So, if you break down each of these components, like office visit ka kya cost padega, again, since it's a copay, $25 is what you'd be paying for Aetna Immune, at least, and that's a very, very good copay. Emergency room copay. So, like, you want to be thinking about in terms of copay as opposed to the cost, because the cost really is generally really high. So you can assume that it's going to be in the few hundreds of dollars. And the variation really, it can go to thousands or it can stay at $200-300 depending on what you need. Like if it's a common cold, it's probably going to be in the lower hundreds, right? So yeah, I know that these are not convenient realities, and so we'll talk about what is the framework to make sense of all of this towards the end. So hopefully that's helpful to some extent. Akshay asks, how much is the Aetna Immune insurance? Akshay, I believe, so each of our insurances is, the prices you're seeing on the plan's website, they're all different age groups pay different prices. That's why these insurances are so inexpensive while not compromising on quality. So if you're under the age of 24, you pay, I believe, $1,060 for Aetna Immune, $1,050 or $1,060, something. It's like give or take $10 there. For the Elite plan, that is the United Health Elite plan, is $1,220, and I believe the United Health Plus plan is $1,000. And I know you guys are already doing the math, and there was already that sort of like impulsive reaction where you were like, "Acha, maybe I should go for the Plus plan because that's the cheapest one." So don't do that right now. We'll do plan analysis and comparison. Ironically, the Aetna Immune plan is better than our other, like the more expensive United Healthcare plan, which is $1,220. And we'll talk about why that's the case. I'm not gonna give you a truth or ask you to take something as fact until and unless we've dissected it and we've kind of arrived at that conclusion. Okay. Isha asked, let's say, for example, I go to the ER. I have a plan of annual deductible of $100 and a co-insurance of 80/20. My bill is, say, $400 and medication tier 2 of $70. So how much am I actually paying? Excellent question, Isha. Thank you so much. Actually, I just realized I didn't actually, take an example and do this for Chirag. So thank you, Isha, for stepping in and actually laying out an example. So here's the example that Isha lays out. She says she goes to the ER which is the emergency room, she has a plan of annual deductible, so not ISO, not Indian plans, of $100. Now, we are assuming this is the first time she's using her health, insurance or going to a healthcare institution. And she says, co-insurance of 80%, and my bill is $400 and medication tier 2 of $70. How much is Isha paying? So let's think about this. So she has a bill of $400. The deductible is $100. For the sake of this conversation, we are going to assume there is no copay that applies to the ER, which typically is not the case. There's an emergency room copay. But let's take the simpler example first. So she spends $400 on a visit. Or actually, let's forget about the ER. Let's just say this was a doctor visit. You had to, I don't know, you sprained your ankle or something and you had to go see a doctor. So in the case that you went and saw this doctor who's not at the Student Health Services, and you have a bill of $400, you pay, and this is the first time you're using your health insurance. So the first thing that kicks in is your deductible, right? So us $400 mein, you have to first pay that $100, right? So step one, you cover the deductible, right? Now the deductible is $0, and so your plan is now active, right? So you've paid $100. Bacha kitna? You've got $300 remaining, right? Now your co-insurance is 80%, right? So you pay 20% of $300, right? Which, if my math is right, is $60, right? So you've paid so far $100 plus $60. Now let's move on to medication. Separate medication mein co-insurance apply nahi hota hai. It's the copay or whatever, like it's defined specifically for medication. So let's talk about the case of Aetna Immune, where you have a $10 copay for tier 1 and tier 2 ke liye it's a $20 copay, right? So you have a prescription of $70. In this case, you only pay $20. Uske baad the whole thing is covered by the insurance. So what did you pay? $100 deductible. That sets to $0. Your plan becomes active. 20% of the other $300, which is $60, 100 plus 60, 160, plus the copay for your medication, after which the entire thing is covered by the insurance, in which case you pay $20 more. So your bill is $180. All right. Hopefully that makes things slightly clearer. I'm going to go into more complex examples, but I want to go through questions quickly. Kiran asked, is there any separate dental insurance? So some of our plans have, so Aetna Immune is a plan that actually does have palliative dental care, which is sort of for like, if you have an incident or like, your tooth starts to hurt or something, you get up to $600 worth of coverage, which is not much. And that's, that's probably worth one good sitting for one kind of procedure at a dentist's. But the norm in the US when it comes to dental and vision as well is that those are usually separate insurance plans and sold separately, just because those are, you could repeatedly be using, if this was included in the insurance, you could be using a lot of the dental insurance or a lot of the visual insurance, right? So vision insurance. So insurance companies, this industry is just like kind of architected itself in a way that these are separate. So for example, even very expensive insurance, like Brown's insurance was like $4,500, and they didn't have vision or dental. And I don't remember off the top of my head if Drexel's plan has vision or dental, but I'm pretty sure, again, none of the plans really offer comprehensive dental or vision coverage. It's very little or nothing. But to answer your question, Kiran, we can get you separate dental insurance plans if you so need them. And I really do recommend, if you have a condition, do not compromise. And again, you might be thinking you're saving money right now, but you're just being what's called penny wise and pound foolish. So think about the cost is actually going to be, this is a year-long decision. Cost is going to be not what you're paying in that moment, but what you pay across the entire year. All right, let's move on. So Kiran, if you need that, if you have a dental condition, please contact us. We will help you pick again, the combination of high value and as best affordability as you can get. Now, Ayush says, how do we pay the copay? I mean, is it online, or we need to submit the money to the health center or the hospital mentioning the insurance or some other way? So at all in-network providers, which again, for a major insurance company like Aetna or United Healthcare, that's going to be the vast majority, 99% of the doctors or hospitals or even your student health center. You just tell them, like, the process is going to be when you're booking an appointment at an external doctor or when you're going to your student health center or anywhere, they will ask you for your insurance ID number or your insurance ID card. And when you give them that number, they'll look you up in the system, and that'll automatically apply whatever benefits of your insurance are to the cost that you have to pay. And so they'll tell you ki itna pay karna hai. So in the previous case that Isha sort of laid out, where you'd be paying $180, you would just be told, like, that math would automatically be done for you, and the cashier would say $180, please, and then you pay that. So by whatever means you're paying, cash, credit, whatever. All right, so Isha says, what are the various percentages for coinsurance? Isha, it really varies. Like it goes from 60% to 100%. There are specific things in certain plans for which it's 100% coinsurance. So as an example, I think in the Elite and the Immune plan, you've got 100% coinsurance for preventive care. Preventive care essentially counts as like routine physicals, like seeing a doctor when you're not sick. That counts as preventive care, and vaccinations and things like that. So those have 100% coinsurance, and 100% coinsurance basically means it's free, right? So it really varies across like different plans. And sometimes coinsurance can actually, different sort of blocks of treatments can have different coinsurance. All right. Radhika says, now it's clear. Great. Akshay says, can you please give an example of how we can choose one plan among all the plans? Akshay, that's going to be the next thing I dive into. Let me finish the other questions and we can start talking about that a little bit. Again, I'm sure you guys kind of already get a sense of that, the fact that there is a reasonably large amount of nuance to these things. So I don't think I'll be able to cover everything in terms of how to choose a plan, or we'll have to make a decision probably between which plan to go with, sort of like a more specific analysis, or like talking about how you generally choose plans. Maybe we'll try to sort of go for a middle ground. But what I'm saying is that the full story is not going to be covered today. I think we'll probably want to do a follow-up session where we continue this conversation. And then now that you're armed with these conceptual tools, then we go into the details of how do you really pick these plans. We'll do a little bit of it today, but it just kind of takes time. All right, next question is, Radhika asks, which insurance do you use and how many times did you have to use it? So Radhika, while I was at Brown, I had a scholarship, so I didn't have to pay for external insurance, and Brown was paying for Brown's own insurance. So that's the insurance I was using. Excuse me. That's the insurance I was using. After graduating, right now I'm on Aetna Immune, which is actually categorically our best recommendation. It's not actually, again, this is the kind of thing that can actually make a difference. That it's not our most expensive plan. Our most expensive plan is Elite, which is like $1,200, but it is certainly our best plan. So, and that's the plan that I am on. And how many times did I have to use it? I'm quite sensitive to change of weather, so I use my, I got like a cold and stuff quite a lot of times. So I would say I definitely use the health center, usually be for like cold or, responding to that, 6 times a year on average for sure. Health center, and maybe 1 on average, like going outside. Like outside the health center, like some kind of like food poisoning or, all those kinds of things. So yeah. And again, that's what I'm saying, right? Like 1 year is not a good enough sample size for you to recommend to anyone, this is how your life is going to be in the US. It's a new freaking country. Everything's going to be new. The air you breathe, the water you drink, just everything, all environmental factors, the food you eat. So just, it's not as simple or as easy as you'd sort of want to believe that it is, or other people would have you believe. Okay. Chirag asks, are radiology tests covered in the plans? So Chirag, it's covered straight away without a copay in Aetna Immune. This is one of the caveats and the weaknesses of the Elite and the Plus plan, is that there's a $200 copay for I believe like MRI, CAT scan, all of these like diagnostic test scans. So that's really bad, right? Because that's a $200 difference. I mean, really bad as in like when compared to Aetna Immune, because that means that you're spending $200 extra, right? And then the insurance kind of covers a percentage of the rest of the bill. So that is I mean, they're all definitely covered. Like all of these things are covered. These are like pretty great plans. So the exclusions, which is the set of things that these plans don't cover, aren't that much really. Like the major exclusions really are dental and vision. In the case of the United Health plans, the Elite and Plus, they don't cover sports or sort of recreational physical activity-based injuries, which again is a great feature of Aetna Immune, is that it does actually cover, like if you're playing soccer, forgive me, football with your friends, then that is covered for Aetna Immune. Or like going to the gym, that is covered under Aetna Immune. If you injure yourself, that is not covered in the case of the Elite or the Plus plans, or sort of the intramural, interscholastic kind of sports things essentially are not covered. And also for Immune, it's not that everything is covered. Like every sport, like you couldn't go and like ski and that's covered, because that is a really dangerous sport. So there's a list in the brochure. There's a appendix of covered sports, and football and cricket and all of these things are there. And there's an appendix of more dangerous sports that aren't covered. So go check it out. So yeah, but short answer, Chirag, radiology tests are covered. Yes. Isha says that clears a lot. Thank you. Of course. Mayuresh says, circling back to Isha's question, what if it was a second visit? Okay, sure. Let's do that. Let's do that example for a second visit. So if it was a second visit, and the bill is $400, then the insurance is just going to be active. So do you see how the benefit of having a fixed copay for medication is great? Because anytime you're really going anywhere to a medical facility, the one thing you're going to be getting is some medication, right? Because that's what fixes any illness, right? And so this is one point of contrast, and this is why I'm actually on the Aetna Immune plan, or one of the bigger reasons, as opposed to the United plan. And there are other United plans, I'm sure, but for the plan set that tends to be the norm for international students that I've seen, in the United Health Elite plan and in the United Health Plus plan, you've got the co-insurance is percentage based. So for tier 1, it's $15, I believe. So that's fine. If for common cases, you still pay the fixed amount of copay and then the rest is covered. However, for tier 2 and tier 3 medication, it's 25% copayment, and in tier 3, it's 40% copayment, right? So in the case that for tier 2 medication, say like $100 ka bill hai tumhara, or maybe like let's take a slightly higher number so that you see the difference. Say you have a $200 bill, right, for tier 2 medication, like you broke your ankle or like hurt your ankle, and you get like a 30-day supply of painkillers, right? You slipped, whatever. So $200 ka bill hai tumhara. With Aetna Immune, you're still paying $20. That's the copay, right? However, and painkillers in this case would be like, I'm guessing like Vicodin type stuff would be tier 2. So definitely for some kind of relatively more of an event, it'll be tier 2 medication. Now, if the United Health Elite or the United Health Plus plan is what you're on, it's going to be 25% of 200, right? And that's $50. So that is the suboptimal thing about the Elite and Plus plans. Key, it's percentage based. So of course, for smaller prescription sizes, you might save like $1 to $5, right? So for example, like if it's $100 bill, then difference is $5 ka, right? Because tier 2 $100 bill hai, to tum 25 pay kar rahe ho, and for the other one you're paying $20. So it's not that much of a difference. But like as that number grows, that 25% and 40% start to look like really intimidating sums of money, because they are like 40% of anything is a pretty not an insignificant percentage. So that variable thing is bad for something that you use frequently. This is like a general concept, right? That if you have a fixed expense, that's better. Anyway, so that's the. So the short answer to the question of what happens if it was a second time is that the deductible is just not in application. Deductible bus ek baar, and the first time, it comes into play. Afterwards, it's the rest of the plan. It's the co-insurance, it's the co-pays. Those apply. So actually, let's take another quick example, and we're kind of going into plan comparison territory, but and this would show you again how a copay might come into play. So for example, let's say on that visit, you not only got that medication, but the doctor prescribed like x-rays, right? The cost of the x-ray was say $400. Now, in the case of the Aetna Immune plan, you would be paying 20% of the $400 bill. Again, so that would be $80, right? Now, in the case of the Elite plan, even though it has 90% co-insurance, so 10% ka difference, and so that's a slight improvement than the Aetna Immune plan. You would be paying, but they have a copay, $200 copay for like MRI, CAT, like these kinds of diagnostic scans. So you pay the $200. The first $200 comes out of your own pocket. Then 90% of the next $200 is covered. So you pay 10% of the next $200. So $20 plus $200, $220 as with the Elite plan, as opposed to $80 with the Immune. So again, like, see how copays and all of these little things, you insert them somewhere, it can make a relatively large difference in how much you end up paying. All right. Chirag asks, the Immune plan has a $1,000 benefit in India. Is there a waiting period on this, and what all is covered in this aspect? Chirag, there is no waiting period on this. The day you actually get this, it's covered. I know for a fact, I confirmed this with the insurance company, that Fortis hospitals just will accept it based on your ID number, just similar to US, because I think they're in network. Because the US may Aetna network, and there's like a larger global network for this insurance plan, of which Fortis hospitals are a part of. So you could go to Fortis hospitals, or you could actually like send us receipts, and we could file for reimbursement for, if you're seeing a doctor before coming to the US and getting physicals done and all that stuff. What is covered? Everything that's covered in the insurance in the US pretty much will be covered in India. It's just that there'll be total limit $1,000. And so actually, if you're in India, this might be a good way for you to even redeem some of the money you're investing right now by getting some kind, like whatever pre-US checkups and stuff you're doing. You could actually, if you buy the insurance soon enough, and if the ID is generated and stuff before you actually fly out, you could actually use the insurance in India and actually kind of get that money back, or get whatever amount of money back. So that's a nice, clever trick. And by the way, that applies for a whole year. So it's not just now. You visit India next year, you visit India in the winter break, it's still covered. The limit there is $1,000. Up to $1,000 is the coverage in India. Now, Radhika says, even I have a visual condition. Does the Aetna Immune plan cover that? Radhika, it covers stuff like, office visit, wo sari cheezein apply karti hain, but visual specific things like, glasses, lens, contact lenses, and these things, which are really expensive in the US. By the way, if you wear glasses and all these things, get like a bunch of pairs here, because do not buy them here in the US. They're absurdly expensive. So Radhika, those kinds of things apply, like office visit, because an eye doctor is still a doctor, right? So wo sari cheezein apply karti hain. But I think there's definitely some set of exclusions that don't apply, like very eye specific things and vision specific things, which I can check and get back to you about. So we can talk about that over private message on WhatsApp. I'm also going to take a moment for those of you who are not as aware of the larger work we're doing, aka Gradley, I'm going to leave a link here where you can just come and talk to us, me, our entire team. We will respond to your question within 24 hours. Just message us there. It's going to open in Messenger, heads up. It sort of subscribes you to our Messenger bot, and we are sitting on the back end of the bot. So if you need to talk to us, or you probably are part of the WhatsApp group, throw in your questions there. I know I was sort of not as available earlier this week, but that's because we were focused on wrapping up a couple of other universities. But we are 100% going to be available to the point where you're going to be annoyed. So throw in your questions there. Send us your questions on the link that I just done, which is m.me/join-Gradley in Messenger, and we will take care of anything that you want to talk about. Coming back to questions. Akshay says, so I'll have to choose a plan like Aetna Immune apart from a Drexel health insurance. I have this doubt because the I-20 stated about $8,800 for health insurance. No, Akshay, this is what okay, so maybe I should cover this because I assume that people would know this. There's something called the waiver process. What that means is that Drexel University, just like other universities, lay out a certain set of requirements and criteria, which is called proof of comparable coverage, which just means that Drexel will allow you to waive out of their university insurance requirement if you have insurance that they deem is good enough or comparable to the university insurance, because they take it as their sort of responsibility to ensure the health and sort of the financial well-being of their students. So what will happen is, in our case, for sure will happen, Aetna Immune is accepted by Drexel. Once you pay the registration fee, we will file that application for you. Once it's approved, what Drexel will do on their side of things is that they will remove the bill. Whatever tuition bill you guys have gotten अपने dashboard में, उसमें से health insurance will be removed. So you just don't pay for the university health insurance, you just pay for one insurance. Now, I don't know if some of you might already have paid for the university health insurance or whatever. In that case, once the waiver is approved, Drexel will refund that amount to you. So whatever the cost of the university health insurance is, I don't remember off the top of my head, 2,000, 3,000, whatever, that will be refunded to you. You can get it in cash, you can get it in deposit in the bank account through which you transferred, whatever. But once the waiver is approved, Drexel basically is saying, this insurance is great, you don't need the university health insurance, here's your money back. So in both cases, you're fine. So there are people who kind of I've heard sort of have this conception, if they've paid, it's over. That's not the case. You will get the money refunded. All right. So hopefully that clears things up, Akshay. Parika asks, when will the Aetna Immune insurance start for the year 18-19? It's already started. And what I mean by that is the plan is active. And for you, it'll start 3 business days from the day you make the payment, the full premium payment. Or I think if you go through us, we expedite those things. So it'll probably be 2 to 3 days max for like registering the thing. Because as soon as the ID number has been generated for you, you are now in the system. So once you pay the registration fees, in 72 hours, that'll be generated and we file your waiver application for you. By the way, this is another thing we do. One of our team members is actually a licensed broker. So in the US, if you sell insurance, you have to go through like an exam and you have to apply for a federal license. So the government has to license you to sell insurance and say that you guys are qualified, you follow all the protocols. And then every state, you have to get a state license for every state in the US. We are a licensed broker in the US, and one of our team members has an individual license. And so she's the one going to be filing your waivers as well, because, you know, we should let the experts do their job, because a lot of times students make a small mistake and that can actually lead to the waiver application being rejected. So punchline there is, we are also going to take care of your waiver process. So all you literally have to do is decide what plan you want to go with and pay the registration fee. Then we do our work. We will file the waiver application in 3 to 5 max business days. And then whatever time Drexel takes to give you the approval, that's that. And then once the approval is done, only then you pay. So yeah, you don't pay until Drexel has said, this plan's great, go ahead. So you don't pay, you just pay that $25, which by the way is not an extra fee. It's going to be deducted from your final premium amount. So hopefully that's clear. Chirag asked, could you provide us with add-ons for dental and vision? It would help a lot. Yes, Chirag, for sure. But as I've said, these are expensive. Well, not expensive, but they are, I mean, they will cost extra. I had to buy a dental plan, and that is I mean, that was a good investment. I needed like a procedure done, and I couldn't go back to India. So yeah, if you anticipate, if you are in that kind of bucket, then yeah, we'll find you a dental plan. Yeah, we'll just talk to the insurance companies and we'll try to find a really good plan. Because again, with those plans as well, very similar to general insurance plans, there are a lot of caveats. So you want to be making, you actually want to be getting your money's worth of coverage. A lot of times you can pay some amount of money and then not, just like, you know, ISO and Indian plans we discovered, there are so many terms and conditions which will be buried in some part of the document that in practice, you don't actually get any saving or benefit. So yeah, we can do that legwork for you. Akshay says, thank you so much for the help. Of course, thank you, Akshay. Thank you. I really appreciate the appreciation. Radhika says, can we pay the registration fee with a debit card, or is it mandatory to use a credit card? No, Radhika, it'll work. It should work. If it doesn't work, then let me know. We can also create like invoices and stuff. We can figure something out. But Indian debit cards work. That's how our backend is architected to accept them. But some kind of like, I heard about these things the first time called like RuPay cards or something like that. They might not work. So try to sort of go for a mainstream Visa, MasterCard type debit card. They will 100% work. And again, anyone has any questions, anything at all, just message in the group or message Bradley's Messenger. Or if I'm in the group and you're in the group, you can message me privately if it's related to your health or anything else. And I completely understand that you don't want that to be a public discussion. So I'm happy to even jump on a call with you. And again, because that is really important. Like this is not an expense. This is an investment in future savings and future health, like good health of yourself. So especially for people who have some kind of concerns about previous health conditions, or are sensitive to a certain kind of environmental change or whatever, this decision is so crucial and so much more about like choosing the cheapest plan. So for you guys, you really you should be taking into account like a whole separate other things, not just what we've talked about today, but more like, does this plan fit my needs? And I'll talk a little bit about how to kind of do that. And if you have any of those doubts, just straight up, we'll just jump on a call. And because you do not want to be sick and stranded in the US. That is not a good place to be. Radhika says, will the payment include some processing fee? No, Radhika. I mean, every sort of payment processing company charges you 3%. We don't. As in like it's part of the fee. Parag says, can you share some insights on travel insurance? Also, I think someone said, can you do a session on travel insurance? I'm happy to do that. Here's my short spiel on travel insurance. It's not necessary. I've traveled between India and the US over 15 or so times now. I've never had travel insurance. In fact, it's when I started helping master's students that I heard about this concept of travel insurance and how pervasive it is and how people think nahi lena chahiye, because none of my undergrad friends. So it's like there's a correlation between where you'll find these sneaky, slimy Indian brokers and where people really believe that travel insurance is important, because that belief is fed into your mind by an Indian broker. Why? Because consumer airline protections for lost baggage and all these things today are really, really good. Especially like if it's a US-based company, you can file a complaint with the US Transport Division, and they are legally obliged to respond to you within 48 hours. If they don't, you can sue them for enough money that you don't have to you can drop out. So point being, this is just one of those things that's like fed into the minds of students ki acha ye lena chahiye kuch ho gaya to, because like the other things beside that they cover. And by the way, side note, Aetna Immune also has travel coverage. So you don't need extra outside insurance. But here's what I'll say. Just think about two things, right? If your baggage loss and all that stuff is covered, and then health insurance coverage hoga hi. If you go with the Aetna plans, for sure, it's worldwide coverage, right? So, bacha kya? You've got like shit like passport loss pe they'll refund you $100. Like, what's that about? Like, if I lose my passport, I have far bigger problems than being like, oh, I got $100. I could probably, I don't know, buy a Kindle or whatever, right? Like, that makes no sense. And the odds of that happening also, like if you're careful. So this is actually one of those things that I don't recommend, because, and I know it might sound contradictory to like the fact that I've just said ki anecdotal evidence or anecdotal, like one person's story should not be your decision-making framework. But I can vouch for this ki it's not just about me. It's like, I'd never heard of this being such an essential thing. And I've kind of polled friends and so on and so forth. This is absolutely essential. You will have enough coverage just when you buy the ticket and your health insurance plan that you're safe and you're fine. So it's an unnecessary expense, in my opinion. Especially if you're taking the Aetna Immune plan, it has travel. It has even those things like baggage loss and passport loss and all those things. So it's just unnecessary. That's my thought. Also, like the ironic thing is this, right? Ki abhi you guys are coming to the US, pehli baar, and you're gonna buy a travel insurance, but next year se tum log travel insurance kharidna band kar doge. So statistically speaking, the universe is not gonna become kinder to you next year. And if something was to happen, it will happen this year or next year, right? This logic, by the way, is also applied for health insurance. Some people are like, first year I'll take university insurance, next year I'll take ISO insurance. Like, that makes zero sense. You cannot predict कि इस साल कुछ नहीं हुआ तो next year कुछ नहीं होगा. So anyway, but coming back to the travel insurance point, ask your seniors, right? Or like ask people, or just think about yourself, right? Are you going to buy travel insurance every time? Why? Because you'll probably feel more secure and in control of the process, right? So I think it's more of a psychological thing than actual factual based stuff. All right. Radhika says, thank you so much for the session. Plus, thank you for the additional tip on bringing extra spectacles. Thank you, Radhika. I really appreciate the kind words. I will, yeah. Okay, guys. I think that's a good amount of content, amount of questions. I'm going to take like 10 minutes because, what I don't want is, it's already 1 hour, 20 minutes, this video. And I'm hoping that some other people who didn't attend would be sort of able to watch this session. Well, what I will do after this is maybe like later today, like timestamp the videos in the description. So like you can fast forward and you don't have to sit through stuff that you're not interested in. So it'd be like X minute pay, what is, copay, what is co-insurance, blah. Now, what I also kind of do need to go. So I maybe have 15 more minutes, out of which 5 to 7 minutes I want to talk about, now that we've understood all of these things, what is the equation? And trust me, we actually do have an equation. That is sort of the algorithm that our comparison tool functions on. And hopefully by the weekend, we'll release it and you guys will have a chance to use it and play with it. What is the equation to evaluate insurances? How do you take into account all of this complexity and hidden terms and conditions in fine print? I'm going to talk about that for 5 to 7 minutes. And before I go into that, though, just want to pause, ask if anyone has any questions, ask if we're good to go, and then we'll do the final segment. And then we'll do a little bit more of questions then. And then I will see you guys in the next session, or I will continue the conversation in the WhatsApp group. So, point being, anyone have questions, anything, any thoughts, any words of appreciation, anything that particularly, anything, just say nice things. I'd love to hear nice things. Or anything that helped. That's actually feedback, by the way. If you tell us what things you liked about the session, that is actually really good feedback because, the way we sort of develop these sessions is kind of like a stand-up comic routine. So it's like we figured out, Kecha, this works. This was really important. So tell us what, or tell me even the things that really helped you conceptually or whatever. So yeah, I'm going to pause for a couple of minutes. So why don't you guys put your comments, questions, anything in, and then we'll go into the final 5 to 7 minute segment on how the F do you choose and evaluate plans and compare them. Yeah, this is when you like type out questions or comments or whatever you found helpful. Wow, silence. Matlab, you guys, this is a conversation, so you can also type कि नहीं कोई question नहीं है मेरे पास. Like thank you. Thank you, Chirag. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Madhura. Appreciate it. All right, Radhika says no questions. I'll wait for a couple more people. Ayush says, this session was great, got to know a lot of things, and I really appreciate the work that you are putting in for grad and undergrad students coming to the US. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ayush. That's really sweet of you. Parag says, great session. Thumbs up, thumbs up. Thanks, Parag. Thank you for sort of coordinating things with the group. Thank you, Parag and Toshika. Both special thanks for, helping us, for taking some work off of our plate. And vouching for us, of course. Toshika says, and speaking of, your explanation with examples helped a lot. Definitely informative. Thank you a lot for the session. Thank you, Toshika. Parika says, start date for the insurance was helpful as my current insurance is expired. Right. Makes sense. Akshay says, yes, we appreciate your help and how frank you were. Thank you, Akshay. That is always the goal. Thank you. Very nice of you. Dhwani says, no questions, thanks a lot for the explanation. Chirag says, by when can we start registering and purchasing the insurance? Like, you can start now, man. But again, before you guys do pull that trigger, I do want to cover how to evaluate plans, because the whole point of this is that you make a more informed decision. So just because the session was impressive, don't you're not buying me, you're buying a plan. He says, I think I'm good for now. I really like the subtle nuance plans you explained for us. Says, thank you for explaining the basics of costing a lot later. Thank you. My narcissism is satisfied. No, I'm joking. No, thank you. Again, it helps a lot to know that this is well received. Again, the one thing I would say again is obviously really appreciate gratitude, and the way we find meaning and satisfaction in what we're doing is if you go and tell your friends about what we're doing, and your friend, again, don't do it if you don't feel like what we're doing is valuable. But if you genuinely do, really appreciate it if you go tell your friends. Ask them to reach out to us, because again, everyone has their own sort of place where they start, and we're happy to have a conversation with them and help them understand things, or add them to the group, whatever it is. Spread the word, because that's difficult for us to do, because we're so focused on getting a bunch of things right, the processes, the software, the portal. That's where you guys can help us, and that's an amazing way to sort of thank us. So yeah, if you do that, I will forever be indebted to you. Okay, let's talk about the punchline of this session, which is, what is the... Actually, let me just get water before I dive into that. I will be right back. Sorry. And then we'll do the last segment, and that'll be it. So 15, 20 more minutes, and we're done. All right. Okay, I'm back. This is really interesting. Every time I go off the frame, a bunch of people leave. Madhura says, if possible, please send a recorded version of today's session. I will send that. I'll share the link in the group. Rakshit says, when will you compare the plans? Now, Rakshit. By the way, the session was awesome and really helpful. Thank you. Just a note about the comparison stuff is that I just want to cover like the general algorithm of how to do it today. And then in the follow-up session and in questions in the group, we can plan specific comparisons. Where cost of each plan? Kavya, you can go to grady.us/plans. You can look at the plans and the prices. That's there. Important to note that the prices mentioned on the link are for 24-year-old. If you're 24 and under, there's a different price if you're 25 to 29. That's going to be shown on our where you can log in and enter your university and like age and all that stuff. That's being updated and will be back online by tomorrow or so, I'd like to think. So then you guys can even log in and sort of personalize the plans to your age and your university, things like that. That'll give you the price for your age group. Because again, these plans are age rated, which is how they are so affordable while being so good. Because if you're 24 and under, you pay relatively low amount. 25 to 29, you pay a slightly higher amount, and 30 to 40, you pay like a lot of money. You pay like $3,000-$4,000 for these plans. So, if you're in that age group, come talk to us. We'll try to find you a plan that's like more affordable. But in that case, you might be better off going with the university's plan, because like it might be cheaper. All right. Okay, let's dive into the algorithm, or like how do you really choose plans, right? Like that is the question. We talked about all of these things, and you guys are going to be like, okay, now I'm going to go and try and read the brochure. Maybe I'll understand stuff. And I think you'll definitely understand stuff in the sense that you'll understand more than you did earlier. But it does take some time to actually get to the point where you can now use this information and assess plans and deliver a judgment. So I'm going to save you all right now. I'm going to talk about it. By the weekend, we'll release an actual tool where you just do one click. You name a plan, you name another plan. We have a bunch of plans stored, ISO, even Indian plans. You do one click, and it'll instantly generate a table of comparison, and it'll generate an expected cost, which is the concept we've been talking about, right? So let's talk about this. Really, the fundamental thing you're trying to calculate is what is the expected cost that I can expect to pay over the course of the entire year when I use this plan, right? That is the thing you're trying to calculate, because that is a real cost of insurance. It's not what you pay now. It's not a it's not a fixed expense asset. It's something that will. I mean, it's meant to save you money, but it can cost you money if you make the wrong decision, right? So that is the actual accurate and sensible way to think about it, is that in some ways you kind of predict and calculate what is going to be the expected cost for this year. Now, that's not easy, right? Because there's an element of a bit of an educated guesswork involved. There's an element of sort of thinking about your own pattern of usage, what might happen. And there's obviously the element of the unpredictable, right? You don't know what might happen. That's just the nature of life. And especially that's the nature of life when you're in a new place, right? So let's break it down a little bit. So if we think about expected cost, the first thing you want to be thinking about is what is, like, the first thing you want to take a stock of is where is my health at, right? Like where, what are my health vitals, or like, an easy hack is how many times did I have to see a doctor in the past year? Not to say that's the exact number that'll happen here, because again, it's a new environment. You're going to be walking a lot. You're going to be working really hard. A whole bunch of things are going to be happening to you, right? So it's going to be a new environment for you. So that is something that's important for you to take into account. Sorry, I just got an important email. I'm just going to glance at it really quickly. Oops. Okay, I'm going to, all right. So we were talking about, you want to take into account your own kind of health patterns. This is especially true for people who have pre-existing conditions. So if you have something, say, like asthma, right? And this is a concept we didn't get to really talk about. It's the concept of exclusions, which is essentially every plan's brochure at the end will have a list of things that the plan does not cover, right? Usme dental hoga likha hua, vision hoga likha hua. But if you have some kind of existing condition, and you might not even need to have it at the moment, but if you have some kind of childhood history, it can recur or whatever, you want to first check this feature, that in my plan, are pre-existing conditions covered or not? Because cheaper plans like ISO, like Indian plans, they have either very limited coverage for pre-existing conditions, or they just don't have it, where they'll say something like, they're covered after 6 months of a waiting period. This is an ISO plans ye hota hai. What that means is if you have anything that can be counted as a pre-existing condition, then for the first 6 months, so say if you have asthma, right? For the first 6 months, everything related to asthma, every bill you have to cover fully. The insurance plan does zero. So very important thing, exclusions is part of that equation. Now, you want to think about, besides this, you want to try and guess and run with a particular number of X number of times is when I'll visit the doctor. And again, you want to be thinking about this concept. Isha says, does Aetna Immune cover pre-existing conditions? Any exceptions? Yes, Isha, it does. No exceptions. I mean, and exclusions like dental and vision apply, but yes, it does cover pre-existing conditions immediately. All right. So coming back, so you want to get a sense of like a number you can run with to do the math, really. Because, again, don't buy insurance plans based on like a feeling or even a good pitch or whatever. you want to buy these plans based on numbers, and the number you're trying to calculate is expected cost. So try to get a sense of that number. Say like 3, I would say, like, is the minimum someone should assume 3 visits to the student health center. And you can assume 0 visits to emergency rooms, 0 visits to like outside doctors, because the student health center is quite well staffed. So, but that I think you kind of have to assume, like, that would be my sort of minimum bar. Now, once you kind of have that number in mind, really at high level, what you're trying to do is you're trying to think about the 3 sort of situations or 3 cases or 3 buckets, right? There's the best case bucket, there's the average case bucket, and there's the worst case bucket, right? And you want to have a balanced coverage. Now, you obviously want to have really good coverage in the average case bucket, right? Sorry, worst case bucket, where if something really catastrophic happens to you, you are covered. You don't have to take out a separate loan to pay for that. So, things like saying no to ISO's plans because they don't have motor accident coverage, right? That worst case bucket, wala check, it fails, right? You ideally want to go with plans. So there are some plans that have something called a per condition limit or annual plan limit, which is basically like they'll say $500,000 is the maximum amount of benefit that you can get from this plan. Now, to you, $500,000 might seem a lot of money, and you might be like, I'm probably never going to spend that money. And that's actually true. 500K is a lot of money, and some major-ish incident will have to happen for you to sort of get that. But the thing for you to think about is this. It's not 500K of the money you pay. It's 500K of the money the insurance company pays. So if you're ever paying any like bill, right, the insurance company is paying 5 times that. So that number can ramp up really quickly. Anyway, so if you think about the worst case bucket, ideally you want to go with plans which have an unlimited coverage. So Aetna Immune, Elite, Plus, all of them have unlimited coverage. So these are sort of the fundamentals. Now, you want to take into account let's just kind of dive into the equation. Here's the expected cost. Expected cost equals, I'm going to type this out actually. Actually, it is going to be available. And I'm going to be done in 5 minutes anyway. So if you don't have to rush, please stick around. Radhika says you were going to talk about PSI. Radhika, I think it's a little late. I'm going to schedule another session. Hopefully, we've covered enough today. You guys can go tell your friends. And I think when we're comparing specific plans, that I would love to reach an even wider audience, because I think that is super essential for people. Because if you're already kind of considering a PSI plan or an ISO plan, you need to hear this, right? It's a far more urgent that people who are already considering some sort of mediocre or bad plans, that they hear this, than someone like you who's undecided and wants to make an informed decision. So anyway, I'm going to quickly type this out. So this is a simplified version of the equation, but expected cost equals premium, very obvious, right? Then think about it, deductible, right? Deductible is basically the insurance plan will need to be active, right? And remember, we are assuming 3 like kind of commonplace type average case visits, because we're really trying to optimize for average case, because certainly with the plans that we are offering to you, the best case is covered, the worst case is covered, right? As I kind of discussed, the unlimited per condition coverage, lifetime benefit, all of those things. So between the plans, these sort of good plans, not ISO, not Indian plans, you want to see the average case mein, where am I spending the least amount of money? Where is the expected cost the lowest for the average case? So this equation we want to use to calculate the average case bucket ka expected cost. So premium plus deductible, right? Because deductible you have to pay, right? We are assuming you're going to use your health plan 3 bari at least, and you're going to just go to the health center. You're going to get some medication. Maybe let's say out of those 3 times, 1 time you get some kind of scan or test. Like say you get a cold 3 times, ek bari bahut serious hai, to lung infection ke liye x-ray or whatever karenge. Okay? So let's do that. So for that case, deductible apply hoga. So it'll be premium plus deductible. Plus, in this case, we are assuming you get, a scan done, right, once. So if there's any copay, let's kind of like broadly specify karte hain, and then we'll go into the specific example. So it's going to be plus copays, right, expected copays for a certain number of visits, plus your coinsurance, right? as in what you like you pay. So 80-20 80% is being paid by the insurance company, 20% is being paid by you. So you have to add that as well. And let's see, and sort of kind of as a as a side thing, not necessarily like a part of the equation, you have to make sure it's not excluded. Something is not excluded, right? Anything that you'll need. So this is given that is the case. Okay, so you've got premium plus deductible plus whatever relevant co-pays plus whatever you pay as a result of the co-insurance. At a high level, I think let's leave it to that. It's simple enough. That is the equation, right? Now let's take an example. So in this case, you just go to the health center 3 times. Ek bari you fell and slipped. You'll need to get a scan for that. Do bari it was cold. One time it was cold, one time it was allergy, whatever, right? We're trying to optimize and calculate for the expected cost average bucket. So let's do this math. I'm going to pick Immune and I'm going to pick United Healthcare Plus. Same price plans, $1,000 or so. So 3 visits ke liye, we've got, let's multiply by 3, right? Or not multiply by 3. Let's calculate the visit where you just had medication and the visit. So for both plans, the student health center copay is $0, right? So we're adding $0 for each of these 3 visits. The copay for a student health center visit cancels out. The deductible for each of these plans is $100, right? So there's no way कि तुम 3 visit में $100 cross नहीं करोगे total bill. Probably first visit में ही cross हो जाएगा, right? So you calculate that $100, right? Then what we add, उसके बाद, now this is where the differences start to show. For Aetna Immune, once we've added these 2 things for the student health center visit, now you are prescribed a medication. Let's assume tier 2 medication, average case. And the bill every time is $200. Let's assume that to be the case for all 3 times, right? So in the case of Aetna Immune, remember, it was fixed copay, right? So you pay $20 every time. So यहाँ पे क्या cost हुआ? For Aetna Immune, it's 20 multiplied by 3, right? That's your medication covered. You've already paid $0 for the visit. And the third thing that's remaining is that one time you actually had to get a test or a scan. Now remember, there was no copay for a scan, right? In Aetna Immune. So let's say the scan costs you $300. 80% co-insurance for Aetna Immune, you are paying 20% of $300. What is 20% of $300? That is $60, right? So let's kind of pause there, right? Like for a very simple base case, which again, I think is a minimum, like if you're really healthy, at least minimum case, this is how much you'll be spending. So we have then $0 for the student health center visit, $100 for a deductible, that's $100, plus 20 times 3 for tier 2 prescription medication, that's $60. So in total, $160. And we have 20% of a $300 bill for diagnostic scans. That is $60. So it's 160 plus 60 equals 220, right? We've covered deductible, we've covered copays, we've covered your co-insurance. Now, this is what you spend, and then say the premium for Aetna Immune is, let's take $10.50. It's either $10.60 or it's $10.50, like something $10 ka difference. But let's assume $10.50. So it's $10.50 plus 220, which is $1,270. That is the expected cost for the average case, bare minimum for Aetna Immune. Now let's repeat the same exercise for for United Healthcare Plus. Now, quickly, I'll do this quickly so you guys can actually ask me questions. Is $0 student healthcare center copay, again, it's a solid plan, so you have that feature. $0 wahan pe laga. Deductible is $100 again. And again, the question we have to ask always when including deductible is it annual or is it per illness, right? Because yahan pe agar ISO we were calculating, then we would have for every visit, you'd add $100. So then instead of 220, it would be $420, right? So again, be aware of what you're using and whether it's applicable in your case or not. So deductible is going to be $100. Now we talked about the slight defect in the United Healthcare Plus plan and Elite plan is percentage-based co-insurance. Since we're assuming average case, we're getting tier 2 medication, and the bill is, I believe, we assume $200, right? So 25% of $200 is $50. So per visit, you have $50. So you get $50 multiplied by 3, right? That is a medication copay. Now we have one more thing to factor in, which is the scan that you got when, say, you hurt your ankle. Now, if you remember, again, this is why it's so important to take a look at the individual brochures of plans, because United has amazing plans and United has shitty plans. Aetna has amazing plans, Aetna has shitty plans, or shitty as in for your use case. So look at the specifics of a plan. Don't think in any generalities. Anyway, if you remember, for the United Healthcare Plus plan, there is a $200 copay for, I believe, CAT scan, MRI scan, things like that, right? Diagnostic tests and scans. So you're paying, if you get a diagnostic scan, you are paying $200 first, right? And if you remember, we said, let's assume $300 cost a scan. So pehla $200 you pay, and then the co-insurance, if you remember, of Plus plan, and you can check, you don't have to remember, is 80%, same as Aetna Immune. So you pay 20% of the remaining cost after the copay in this case. So 20% of 100 is 20. So recapping, $0 for student health center copay, $100 for the plan annual deductible, $50 per prescription, because 25% of the prescription bill is what you're paying in the Plus plan. That multiplied by 3, because every time you're going to get medication, plus $200 copay for the scan, and plus 20, because $300 was the bill, and $100 was remaining, and you pay 20% of the remaining bill. So what does that add up to? 100 plus 150, 50 multiplied by 3 times prescription medication, plus 200 copay, plus 20, which adds up to 300, 450, $470. So the expected cost of that plan then becomes, I believe the premium is $980 plus $470, which is $1,450. Contrast this with $1,270. So the saving between just these two plans is roughly $180, right? So hopefully that is a good example of how the smallest of things in very similar looking plans, and these plans are really they are quite good, and they are in the upper echelon of plans. The smallest of differences, until and unless you do the math, can make a difference of $200, $300, and sometimes more dollars. We took the base least amount of healthcare interaction in this example. Anyway, hopefully that was helpful, guys. I don't think I can do a plan-specific comparison today. I will do it in the next session. What I want to do now is take your questions for 5-ish minutes, and then I have to run, unfortunately, because I have a meeting in 15 minutes. So, was that clear? Again, you know the drill. Give me feedback, good things, bad things, whatever. Ask questions. Let's wrap this up. All right. So, as always, this is the time to type some stuff. Isha says, clear. One second. I think the phone's ringing. Type in your responses and questions. All right. Sorry about that. This calculation really clears up a lot of stuff, says Chirag. Much appreciated. Thank you. Alrighty. Anything else, guys? Anything else at all? So my hope today is that I've armed you with the general thinking tools to be able to cut through the bullshit of Indian brokers and be able to think for yourself and evaluate plans. Now, obviously, again, this is new information. It'll take time to settle in. So in the next session, we'll evaluate specific plans. We'll dig deep into plans, and if it's bad or worse compared to another plan, that is going to come out. And hopefully by the weekend, we're aiming for getting the comparison tool live. So you actually, I mean, even though you should have this skill set, and it's good to have this in your sort of mental armory, you won't have to do that work for every plan. You could just choose a couple of plans and the facts would be in front of you. All right. Bart says nothing important, sort of. That was actually a response to my text. This is a new mode of communication. Send a private message, receive response on a public forum. You guys should try it. Mayresh says, I'm good, and thanks for taking this at a comfortable pace. Of course, Mayresh. Radhika says, yes, the example-specific calculation really helped. Have a better picture now about the insurance. Dwashti says, thank you for your time and the insights you gave today. Much appreciated. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Really appreciate the kind words. Isha says, yes, thank you. Looking forward to the next session. All right, guys, that seems to be a good point for me to bow out. It was great hanging out with you guys. I hope this was helpful. Please give us feedback. I'm going to be hanging out in the WhatsApp group. Parth is going to be hanging out in the WhatsApp group. We're there. Parag and Toshika, I think, are thank you again, guys, for sort of, trying to keep the WhatsApp group alive. If you're watching this, the group seems dead. It feels like I'm talking to like a zombie graveyard. So ask questions, not just related to this. Again, happy to answer questions about anything. And yeah, I hope we can continue this discussion. And again, especially because we're so busy, what I would really appreciate is that at the end of this video, just go and tell 3 of your friends who are going to Drexel that weren't here today, that didn't attend. Tell them, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Tell them what you thought of the session. Tell them why they should be there for the next session. Tell them why they should be thinking about listening to us and factoring that into their decision making. You don't have to say take their insurance plans, because again, that we'll have that discussion in the next session. If these plans aren't the best fit for you, they aren't that sort of hitting that sweet spot of value and coverage, don't take them. But get people, tell 3 of your friends, do this, like genuinely do this. Tell 3 of your friends at the end of this video, text them at the end of the video that, hey, like we should talk, or I want to like talk about insurance, and spread the word. And hopefully they can be there at the next session. And again, this is an important discussion, and this is a very important decision, the consequences of which can be really, really, really bad. I know that we're sort of used to this model of the world where everything that we read in a news headline just never seems to happen to us. But trust me, you don't want to test that truth or fact about the universe if it is. And when you're coming to the US for a master's degree, you want to focus on your professional and academic development. You certainly don't want to be taking chances with your health just because you thought, not even actually saved $200, but you thought you saved $200 because we covered how you actually don't save any money. So with that, guys, I hope it was helpful. And remember, go tell 3 of your friends. I'm going to expect 20 of you on average attended this. I hope 60 people attended. If they don't, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. So thank you. Take care. And I will see you very, very soon.